Welcome in D&D and Warhammer friends to a new character build in Baldurs Gate 3. This time around we are creating Malagor The Dark Omen from Total War Warhammer 3, who is a legendary lord for the Beastmen faction, and to pull this off we are using the Satyr Race mod and also the Shadow Sorcerer class mod. Quick housekeeping aside, I want to apologize for overdoing it with the human variant mod in my latest character build videos. I do realize that I have been metagaming and min-maxing too much, so in an effort to really switch things up and also to add variety, I want to focus on different races and also just create characters based on roleplay and for fun. Also for returning viewers, I know I speak about the character lore and backstory at the start of my videos, but I do want to save that for the very end this time around. Let me know if you prefer this new style or also the previous one. No right or wrong answer, I just really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the character design at the very start and then leave the backstory and lore as an optional piece if you do want to listen into those. Now, as for the starting actions and features for the Satyr, we get the Ram ability, dealing 2 to 7 bludgeoning damage, strike a target with your head and horns. We're not going to be using that too much, hopefully, because we are going to be focused more so on casting with this character build. We also gain Summon Instrument, allows you to summon one of the following instruments: lyre, drum, lute, flute, or violin. This would be really good for bard builds in the future too. As for the race features, base racial speed of 10.5 meters, mirthful leaps, jump distance is increased by 50%, so this could be really useful if we needed to either close the distance on an enemy or to escape out of range. Magical resistance, very good for this build too, as advantage on saving throws against spells and other magic effects gives us that anti-mage and the edge up on other casters. Reveler, proficiency in the performance and persuasion skills, as well as proficiency with musical instruments, pretty good for roleplay purposes if you care about that. As for the starting cantrips, the thing with Malagor is he is known for using shadow and dark magic in the Total War Warhammer series, so we're going to do our best to stick to those, especially with Bone Chill, necrotic damage of 1 to 8, and also granting disadvantage on undead. Electric Arc, I am picking this for crowd control purposes, 47 lightning damage. That also arcs to other hostile creatures after hitting the first one. Mind Sliver for that psychic damage, possibly imposing a 1d4 penalty on an enemy's next saving throw. And also, this is good for battlefield control. Manipulate the earth to your whim with Mold Earth, and also causing difficult terrain. As for spells, Magic Missile, just for that good all-around reliable damage, and also Chromatic Orb. You could also switch out Chromatic Orb actually with Chaos Bolt. This is definitely right up Malagor's alley. Gives you a whole variety of different damage effects that you could cause on an enemy, so pick and choose whichever one suits your situation best. As for Shadow Sorcery, we do gain the unique cantrip of Endarken, simple cantrip for a Shadow Sorcerer, ability to extinguish light across a small area, plus also for 1 turn we gain Shadow Step and advantage on our melee attack. Spells we gain at this level are Hex, necrotic damage, and causing disadvantage on the ability of our choosing, and also Disguise Self. It's basically what the name sounds like, change your appearance. With the subclass features, we gain Dark Vision of 36 meters, and also Strength of the Grave. Existence in a twilight state between life and death makes you difficult to defeat. When damage reduces you to 0 hit points, you instead drop to 1 hit point. Can't use this feature if you're reduced to 0 hit points by radiant damage or by critical hits. And if you're successful with reviving yourself, you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest, so there are limitations for balance purposes with Strength of the Grave, but this is essentially our get out of jail free card if we do find ourselves low on health. For roleplay purposes too, we're going to choose Acolyte for Malagor, giving us skills of Insight and Religion. Ability output, we're going to have a respectable 14 in Dex, overall a +2. Charisma, of course, is our casting modifier, so that's going to be maxed out to 17. Wisdom and intelligence being left alone. Strength being, with points being taken away from. Constitution is going to be at a very odd 15, but we can add points to that as we level later on. Skill proficiencies, religion and insight at an okay +2. Deception, intimidation, performance, and persuasion at a very strong +5 thanks to our charisma. Now, deception and intimidation are going to be good for roleplay purposes for Malagor, especially with the intimidation one, as most beastmen do come off as intimidation and constantly angry all the time. At second level, we gain sorcery points and the ability to create a spell slot. For the spell gain here, roleplay purposes, I would pick Fog Cloud to blind and obscure enemies within. This is really good for crowd control and also just controlling the battlefield, plus also it's definitely something that Malagor himself would use. As a side note, I am also using a mod that adds wings and a fly ability for this build, which Malagor himself uses quite very often on the battlefield for evading the enemies rather than offensive purposes. For the passives, I would personally pick up Extended Spell for all of your shadow effects, and also Twin Spell for your offensive abilities, targeting more than just one creature. At third level, we gain the subclass features of Shadow Curse, Resistance. Connection to the Shadowfell grows and you become resistant to Shadow Curses. You will only be subject to the first level of Shadow Curse damage. Furthermore, when in partial or full shadows, you will receive +1 to AC, adding to our survivability. Eyes of Darkness, well, it's basically the darkness spell. Obscure and blind creatures within. Creatures can't make ranged attacks into or out of it. For the spell choice here, just to roleplay Malagor having Flock of Doom. This is the closest thing that we can get with Cloud of Daggers. 4d4 slashing damage, Cloud of Spinning Daggers. You could just pretend that they're crows, just like the original spell, that attack anyone inside for a total of 10 turns. And for the passive here, personally for me, I would pick up Subtle Spell. Being able to cast spells while silenced is a huge boon for us, as we're going to rely mainly on a lot of our spells and cantrips for damage and area of control. At level 4, pick whichever cantrip you want here. I decided to go with Gust just to have that ability to push enemies off a cliff or to get enemies out of the way so you can escape easier. Also for the spell choice here, Nathir's Mischief. Fill a 6-meter cube with Fey and Draconic magic, producing random magical effects when the spell is cast and at the start of your turns. It's kind of a risk-reward spell, and it's right up the chaos magic that Malagor would use in battle. As for the feat ability improvement, I would definitely double down on charisma, getting it up to 19. Yeah, Constitution is going to be neglected, but also I'm going to say that with Malagor, he's more so of a caster and doesn't really put too much points or time into his personal health. So we're going to try to get charisma up to the max, thus maximizing the efficiency of our shadow spells and cantrips. At level 5, the spell choice that I would personally pick here would be Vampiric Touch. Roleplay it as Spirit Leech from Malagor's spell line. 3 to 18 necrotic damage, and also taking half of their health points and regaining some of yours. It's a good survivability tool to have on hand and in a pinch. At level 6, the spell choice I would pick here would be the good old counterspell, basically anti-magic ability and sending the damage back to the enemy caster. Shadow Curse immunity is one of the subclass features we get here. Connection to the Shadowfell strengthens. Shadows welcome you as one of your own. You are now immune to the Shadow Curse. Furthermore, when in partial or full shadows, you receive +2 AC, adding it to more of our armor class and survivability. Hound of Ill Omen is another unique action we get here too. Target a creature within range to become the target of the Hound of Ill Omen when summoned. The Hound can only attack its target. This ability will recharge after 2 turns. So basically, this is kind of like you sicking your Warhound, or Chaos Hound I should say, onto an enemy. Action here, we gain Shadow Walk. While in dim or light darkness, teleport to an unoccupied space also in dim or light darkness. Good escapability there. We also gain the spells of Shadow Blade, Blur, Blindness, See Invisibility, and also the ability to go invisible ourselves. Lots of versatility when it comes to our spell choices or our style of play now. At level 7, this may seem a little metagamey, but I do promise that it is within Malagor's roleplay. At this level, we're going to pick up Blight, 8 to 64 necrotic damage. Plant enemies take maximum damage from the spell and have disadvantage on the saving throw against it. Plus also, this is just something that is within the lore of death that Malagor himself would definitely use in battle. At level 8, the choice of spell I would choose here would be Banishment, literally what it sounds like, just yeet an enemy into another plane of existence, granting you enough time to deal with lesser enemies or to escape yourself. For the feat, I would pick up Gift of the Gem Dragon, which is a modded feat here, increase our charisma by 1, maxing it out to 20, and when we take damage from an enemy close by, we can use a reaction to deal force damage, attempting to push the creature away. Not only does it help distance ourselves, but also any reaction or extra action of potential damage is a must. At level 9, the spell choice that I would personally pick here would be Insect Plague, 40 damage. Essentially roleplay this as your quote-unquote stronger flock of doom. Instead of crows or daggers, you're going to be using locusts to attack everyone within range, make the area difficult terrain, and impose disadvantage on perception checks for a whopping 10 turns. And also, for the specific subclass spell choice, we gain Hunger of Hadar, Shadow Magic, 4 to 24, cold and acid damage. Target the shadows to summon a sphere of void energy. Creatures within this black sphere are blinded and take damage at the end of their turn and at the start of their turn. Area then becomes difficult terrain for 10 turns. At level 10, pick whichever cantrip you want here. I decided to go with Minor Illusion to provide that distraction. Planar Binding is going to be our spell choice here to literally make otherworldly creatures fight alongside us. This is definitely something that Malagor would use too, as Beastmen are kind of allies to the demons of chaos. Well, they're essentially products of chaos. I won't go too much into the lore right now, but essentially you can make devils, fiends, and even the Celestials your ally. As for the passives here, I would personally pick up Quicken Spell. Spells that cost an action instead cost a bonus action instead. It is a little bit on the expensive side though, so use it when you really need it. At level 11, the spell choice I would choose here to lean more into the lore of death spells for Malagor would be Circle of Death, 8 to 48 damage. Sculpt a massive sphere of entropic energy around a creature, devastate the target and all surrounding creatures. Just an overall FU to everyone in the area. And we also gain the subclass specific action of Umbral Form. Transform yourself into a shadowy form for 10 seconds. In this form, you have resistance to all damage types except for Radiant and Force. You are unhindered by difficult terrain, can see through darkness, and have extra movement. This can be used once per combat and lasts as 10 rounds. This form ends early if you are incapacitated, you die, or you dismiss it. So this is kind of like our spectral form and can roam the battlefield or reposition ourselves to a... Finally, at level 12, I would personally pick Eye Bite for the spell choice here. Eyes become black corridors, walled with teeth. Gaze, capable of inflicting dread, sickness, or putting creatures to sleep for 10 turns. And also, I mainly decided to choose the dread one just because of the fact that, well, Malagor is the Dark Omen, and also Beastmen love spreading fear and terror everywhere they go. And for the final feat, I would pick up Warcaster, gaining advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration on our spells, but also the reaction to cast Shock and Grasp and attack enemies moving out of melee range is a nice little add-on too. Starting off with equipment, Gibbous of the Worshipful Servant, Lickspittle's Alertness, we gain momentum equal to our Charisma modifier and advantage on concentrating saving throws. Now specifically with momentum, Beastmen are all about it, whether it's closing the distance like Tarox or running away like Malagor and being able to keep casting and blasting. I decided to go with the Black Angel Wings, Potent Robe, Gregarious Caster, cantrips deal additional damage equal to our Charisma modifier. Well liked and well fortified, at the beginning of the wearer's turn, Robe activates, granting them temporary hit points equal to their Charisma modifier, a little bit of survivability, and also a little bit of leeway when it comes to taking damage, and a +1 to our armor class, with our AC being a respectable 16, which is pretty good for a caster. Gemini Gloves, Adroit Caster, cantrips targeting foes and allies can target an additional creature. Same target can be chosen twice. Disintegrating Nightwalkers, can't be enwebbed, entangled, ensnared, and can't slip on grease or ice, meaning we have a high mobility with Malagor. Misty Step is also a good get out of jail free card or teleportation spell. With our amulets and rings, Corvid Token, Boon of the Raven Queen. While wearing this amulet, the wearer's jump, speed, and flying are increased by 1.5 meters, and they can cast Featherfall. Featherfall's effect will persist while the wearer is polymorphed or wild shaped. Now, with the Dire Raven polymorph, it is very much in style of Malagor's roleplay. He is known as the Crow, or Crow is somewhere in his title from what I remember in the lore. Keepsake Ring grants us the Dominate Beast spell, make a beast fight alongside you, and it's definitely something that Malagor and other beastmen would use to have the literal wild on their side. Ring of Free Action, ignore the effects of difficult terrain and can't be paralyzed or restrained, pairing pretty well with momentum and also with our Disintegrating Nightwalkers as well. For an optional weapon here, Shadow Lantern is pretty good for roleplay, being able to summon a Shadow Ray to fight alongside you. Kind of leans into Malagor having servants and, well, chaos demons fighting by his side. And with the main staff though, I would personally pick Staff of Spell Power. Overall, really good arcane enchantment, +1 bonus to spell save DC and specifically attack rolls. Arcane Battery, alleviate the arcane burden of spellcasting with the power of the staff. The next spell you cast does not cost a spell slot. Weapon enchantment +2, and being able to regain a spell mid or late battle is definitely going to be a boon to us. Alright friends, that has been my take and character build on Malagor the Dark Omen. Warhammer friends, please let me know if you think that my spell choices and leveling choices are as close as possible to the character himself. I am willing to hear if any of you disagree with my personal choices, and I would personally like to hear what you all would choose as well. And also, for any new and returning viewers who made it this far into the video, thank you so much for taking the time to check out this character build. I'm going to show some of the abilities and showcase them as best as possible. Also, I will admit that when it comes to making this build, it may not seem as offensively focused or one-man doomstacky compared to some of my previous builds, but like I said, this is more so for the roleplay, for some interesting difference from my other character builds, plus also it's pretty good for area of control and overall support too. Alright friends, that has been my take and character build on Malagor the Dark Omen. Warhammer friends, please let me know if you think that my spell choices and leveling choices are as close as possible to the character himself. I am willing to hear if any of you disagree with my personal choices, and I would personally like to hear what you all would choose as well. And also, for any new and returning viewers who made it this far into the video, thank you so much for taking the time to check out this character build. I'm going to show some of the abilities and showcase them as best as possible. Also, I will admit that when it comes to making this build, it may not seem as offensively focused or one-man doomstacky compared to some of my previous builds, but like I said, this is more so for the roleplay, for some interesting difference from my other character builds, plus also it's pretty good for area of control and overall support too. It's also the mod author's personal take on the spell as well. As for a quick lore overview of who Malagor is, he is technically a Bray Shaman, but doesn't serve any single chieftain. Instead, he kind of goes on his own and actually visits different types of herdstones, chaos shrines across the great forest of the Warhammer world, and enacts blasphemous rituals that even other Bray Shamans wouldn't dare themselves. So he is truly one of a kind and is one of the blessed Bray Shamans of the Chaos Gods themselves, so he is chosen amongst them. And I really hope that this character build has come as close as possible to showcasing who Malagor is as both a legendary lord and character in the Warhammer fantasy universe. If you guys want to check out more of that lore of the character, I'll leave the link to the Warhammer wiki in the pinned comment below, along with the other mods that I use to complement this build.